Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. During the course of the next hour or so, buckle up, sit back, relax, have a drink, and listen to some of the most meaningful sports talk that you've ever heard in your lives. Like today's opening story. Now, people are saying, gosh, Mr. Moohead, there's really nothing happening in the wide world of sports, and it's not true. Today, one of the greatest catastrophes in sports history, a certain type of sport, happened. And most people are not even aware of it. And that's why this program exists, is to let people know these things. And here we go. This will go down in history as the worst day ever in pigeon racing. Now, I don't know. If you're like me, you didn't know there was such a thing. Homing pigeons. We all know what a homing pigeon is. I mean, it always finds its way home.
Where's the pigeon mensel?
Yes. I mean, here's the deal. All over the UK, this is a big sport in the UK. I mean, there are people who breed homing pigeons. And they have the homing pigeons run races. But the races are like the one that happened here today was, or a few days ago actually, was 170 miles long. We're not talking about a marathon for people. We're talking an 170-mile round-trip flight. All right, with homing pigeons. 9,000 racing pigeons took off from Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, that's in the UK. The flight should have taken approximately 3 hours. However, 4,500 of the 9,000 birds are unaccounted for as of last night. They were reportedly part of 250,000, that's 250,000 pigeons released at approximately 50 racing events across the UK. And only 10% of them returning on time and tens of thousands missing in action. Now, I got to thinking to myself, now this is something that in today's landscape, maybe like the NFL Players Association, we refuse to do, mini camps and all that stuff. Maybe the birds just got fed up with it and said, fuck this shit. We're not doing this 170-mile round trip shit. And maybe homing pigeons have something more built into them than the ability to come back to where they're released from. Maybe they have a way of communicating with one another too. And maybe they all decided to go on strike and just say, and half of them had the balls to follow through with it. And they kept on flying. And now they're free. Away from this life of bondage and slavery of, thank you so much for returning, my good pigeon. Now I'll put you back in a cage until I race you 150 miles next time. But unfortunately, my imagination.
Remember that they're birds, and that any kind of change in a weather front can alter their perceptions as well. They're very sensitive to that kind of crap. So if they're doing like an 85-mile stretch, they can cross through like 2 or 3 fronts in that time.
Yeah, I mean, usually I don't believe anything you say, but in this instance, I gotta hand it to you because I knew nothing about homing pigeons whatsoever. But you're absolutely right. There was
I actually had to do an entire report on these things from when we studied World War I in goddamn grade school. So I actually do know about a little bit about homing pigeons.
Yeah, I mean, that makes you much further along in the game than I. There was a meteorological event, which probably Dick Goddard and the homing pigeons in Cambridgeshire, England, are never coming home again. And here's why. They use the Earth's magnetic field like a GPS system. All right? I mean, quite simply, it isn't dumb luck that the pigeons find their way back. They have markers in the meteorological patterns. It's still unclear why so many seemingly vanished into thin air. One guy lost as many as 300 birds. I mean, do you have any idea whatsoever how long it took me to breed 300 birds? Just like that. In the blink of an eye, poof. They're referring to this as a flightmare. I'm sorry, I had to. Oh my God, what a flightmare. My cousin Vinny. The breeders of the pigeons are blaming atmospheric conditions, possibly a solar storm above clouds that created static in the atmosphere. So if you were a homing pigeon and you were flying, this is what would suddenly happen. Now, that would fuck up any homing pigeon. Now, if I were a homing pigeon,
we've been jammed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I were a pigeon and I was that far away from home, I'd say, vacay! It's vacay time! I'd head for the fucking beach. I would. I'd say, fuck this thing, you know?
That's probably where they ended up, too.
It's
along
possible.
a seaside village. Or the Isle of Man, one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Although we really need Bronk on this one because then he could tell us what part of the country that is.
Yeah,
Because I'm not even totally sure.
They say there's an 80% chance the birds will get on their way after a few days. Unless the birds just say, fuck it. I mean, what happens? I mean, now I know my imagination gets a little bit away from me sometimes. But
some of these cities will actually set out poison traps for pigeons because the local city ones are such a goddamn problem.
Well,
and the upper crust is such a shitty shot.
If it's such a difficult thing to find them, why don't they just start erecting a huge number of statues? You know, I have these solutions, and nobody listens to me.
Hey, maybe we can give them all the torn down ones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just put up hundreds.
It's a new use.
Thousands of statues, you know? Guaranteed. I mean, so don't say that nothing's happening in the world of sports, folks, because it is. All right. The thing that's being discussed by Cleveland Browns fans, which is really foolishness, I guess Kareem Hunt came out and said, you got to pay the man. That's right. You got to pay Nick Chubb because he is an extraterrestrial life form with superpowers. And, you know, look.
Well, maybe Minka Fitzpatrick can think that. I don't care if he, or that asshole for the Eagles that he face planted in the middle of the field. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm like, what makes you think that the Browns? I mean, stop and think for a minute, fans. I mean, I understand there's not much to talk about, but use the brain that God gave you. The Cleveland Browns have a quarterback, and they're going into a season with a system. Doorbell. Yeah, a system that worked in its first year and a year of implementation where there was no practice. Right? They got the two best 1-2 running punch in all of football. They're getting back Odell Beckham Jr., considered one of the premier wide receivers in the NFL. Jarvis Landry considered one of the top possession receivers in the NFL. And they have a solidified offensive line that makes holes regularly for the running backs and protects the quarterback, who is comfortable playing in the system that he's in. And the team just literally utilized its bounty of draft picks and spent money in free agency to beef up their defense. I don't mean just a little bit. I mean to just totally change the entire face of the defensive secondary. Why would anybody even question whether the Browns would re-sign Nick Chubb? Why? I mean, we don't have to worry about Kareem Hunt until the following year. He signed a 2-year deal, right? But I mean, and it's like, well, you know, he's of such an age that this next big money thing, he's going to get hurt. Who in the fuck is thinking about that at this point in time? This game is either about one of two things. It's either about being a sound fiscal organization, or it's about winning. Now, the Browns have obviously made money in all the years of their misery of losing, or else Randy Lerner wouldn't have walked away a wealthier man than he came in. Being fiscally sound is a part of things where you're trying to replace certain pieces because injury is a reality in the NFL. But it can strike at any age and at any time and to any player on the field. So why would you think, it's like, people are overthinking this. It's like, believe me, by the time middle of the summer and we move on, he'll have his deal. There's no question. Nick Chubb is way too valuable to just say, well, you know, we're afraid of injury. If you're afraid of injury, don't own a football team. If you're afraid that your fortunes could be turned upside down because you lose your quarterback, don't watch old Washington Redskin Joe Theismann videos, and don't watch all the quarterbacks who've gotten their legs snapped in half. Don't do it. Don't own a team. There is no way to avert a crisis when people are literally running into each other from oblique angles at high speeds. So, with that in mind, let me tell you some good things about the Cleveland Browns so that you don't have to worry about, oh God, you know, we're going to lose him because we can't afford it. Well, I don't think the team could afford to keep losing, do you? Jadeveon Clowney has looked great so far. Now, of course, nobody's hitting anybody, all right? But the fact is, if you bring in Jadeveon Clowney, and if he's able to remain healthy, and if he is 3/4 of what he was, you've got to run. Yeah, you've got
of what he was in Houston.
Yeah, you've got a run stopper and a guy who can pressure from one side, put some pressure on the quarterback, but is a real, honest to God, get in the backfield kind of guy with good instincts to get into the backfield, which is something that we didn't see. We haven't seen that in a long fucking time. I mean, Myles Garrett is a guy who will come in, loop around the side, and try to strip the quarterback, sack the quarterback. But the fact of the matter is, he jumps off sides a lot. He's looking to make a big play, big negative play. But what about the stuff at the line of scrimmage? What about the guy who consistently strings the inside runner and forces him to go east-west?
Or a running quarterback.
Yeah, and just totally, forces the guy to throw the ball out of bounds. There's stats they don't keep, and it's things like, I'll give you an example of a stat that won the championship for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So you're going to say I'm crazy, but watch the film and you'll see I'm not crazy. The biggest play besides Kyrie's final three was the chase block down by LeBron James on Andre Iguodala. Now, Everyone says, look how much ground LeBron James covered and how he timed his leap just perfectly. But you know what made that block possible?
The other defender.
J.R. Smith, not the best defender in the NBA, believe me, and a total head case, got enough in Iguodala's way that Iguodala had to hold the ball and make a little extra motion. And in that split second of time, LeBron came in, swatted the ball against the backboard, and it was a blocked shot. But there's no stat that they have for stringing out a play. But hey, I'll tell you this. I want Jadeveon Clowney on my defensive front. If he can force people to go east-west and we have faster linebackers, defensive backs, or if we have a scrambling quarterback who's looking for a hole in the interior of the line to run through, and he can at least slow the progress down and force a quarterback, instead of running, throwing the ball on the move, increasing the chance of either a turnover, A, or B, just throwing the ball out of bounds completely. I mean, these are stats that'll never be kept. But when our offense gets back out in the field because our defense is held, these are the things that I'm interested in the most. So 3/4 of a healthy 28-year-old Jadeveon Clowney goes a long, long way. You know, and now we have best impact. Welcome to the chat room. And I'm looking at with this, first of all, Kareem Hunt did not have a prolific year. But you have to remember, he is a strong-legged runner, and a lot of runners will, A, get stronger as the game progresses, especially if it's their lower body that is really, if it isn't just sheer speed, but if it's power. Every good low gravity, center of gravity, power runner, like the guys, that we've seen around the league who are not the blazers, not the fast guys. They have to rely on the strength in their legs. And unfortunately, and that would be like the Earl Campbell class. And unfortunately, those running backs do tend to have shorter careers because there's more impact. But the ones who are speedier and cut are the ones whose knees go out on them too. So there's no way of predicting these things. But
that's one of the things that made Walter Payton so great, was his ability to stay healthy and be somewhere in between those two styles.
Right. And, I look at, God, the name's blanking, the Lions guy, the great running back, the guy who led everybody
yeah.
God,
the one that wore Billy Sims number 20.
Yeah, I mean, why am I blanking on such a great player's name?
He was Thurman Thomas's backup at Oklahoma State.
And that's why I keep thinking of Thurman Thomas, and it's like, But somebody in the chat room will know, because that's,
Barry Sanders.
Barry Sanders, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Amsterdam, and thank you, Tom Hawley. They looked at career stats. Do you know that he had more carries for loss than any other running back in history?
Well, for a while he had one offensive lineman, that was Lomas Brown, and having to run in a run and shit offense.
Yeah, but
you got 4 wideouts, and you only have 5 linemen to block for you, and you got a weak-armed fucking quarterback.
But I'll tell you one thing: when he got through the first wave, he was he was bad fucking news, and that's what we have in Nick Chubb. He gets by the first wave, and look out, he can outrun you, he can run you over. It's all kinds of stuff. Now, Kareem Hunt, you're saying he only averaged 4.2 yards a carry. I understand what you're saying. He came off the bench, in essence. He was the second option. He comes in cold later in the games, and he doesn't get started until he warms up. And by the time he gets himself rolling, and we saw this on a number of drives during the previous season, then he goes back out and Chubb comes back in. And that may not be the most glamorous thing for their statistics. However, I can guarantee you it's going to be much better for their longevity. And those two men need one another because, yes, one will get more workload if the other is not there. But the way both of them run, they take on people. They're not people who are evasive, going to make you miss kinds of guys. They're going to run right through you.
And they're like Mack and Binder. They want to play together. They want to play on the same team together. So there's none of this super competitive. Well, I need more carries than him because my contract says so and so. They don't have to deal with any of that bullshit. They're both happy to block for each other, catch passes, do whatever.
And again, insurance policy. Chubb being out for 5 weeks. He only played 12 games and had like 1,067 yards. This guy, big play guy. He's more of a big play guy than Kareem Hunt. I'll grant you that.
And look what he did with the screen pass against Pittsburgh. People, you want to highlight? Watch that.
And again, Best Impact's point is he can be replaced if they have the money to re-sign him, but I do not think it will be a disaster if we
it's going to be an absolutely unmitigated disaster.
That's right. And I find this opinion to be aberrant. You say, you can always get a good running back in the first or second round. Look, most of the guys who come out of the first, second round are not Nick Chubb. Okay? I mean, would you be saying this if it were, you take a look at, Saquon Barkley and the time that he missed. You think Saquon Barkley would be doing as well for the Browns as Nick Chubb is doing for the Browns in the system that they're in? Fuck no. But he's one of those evasive cutter guys, and once the knee goes, not so effective as the years go by. How many other running backs can you think of who were taken early in the first round, high up? And did they make the immediate impact on a team that was as bad as the Cleveland Browns? When Chubb first got here, we were coached by an absolute dimwit. And then he had a second guy who was a dimwit who lived in a mobile home. And then he finally got a capable head coach. So, I think it would be absolutely disastrous for a team on the precipice of the ultimate victory, getting far into the playoffs and going to the Super Bowl, to say, well, we just kind of looked at the financial situation and, that I've seen people run their business that way. It's like, I remember in the radio business, it's like, we're sitting pretty now. We're an established entity. I'm not going to spend that money on marketing. The people already know who we are.
When that's exactly what keeps the fucking lights on.
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is when you're in a position to strike in professional athletics, you strike. When it's time to build, you got to build. You got to make the right choices. But once you've started building that, you cannot lose foundational pieces because you're so overly concerned with the financial repercussions of one player. You can't do it. He's our biggest play guy. With OBJ down and never really becoming the big play guy up to this point in Cleveland that we hoped he'd be, Nick Chubb is the biggest chunk player on our team. You can't afford not to resign him. I mean, it's a foolish speculation, and it's really a dumb conversation to have. I'm trying to tell you folks how far we've come. And let's look at our secondary. I mean, do you realize Greg Newsome could be a huge, huge weapon? You look at the, it's like people ask, what was wrong with our secondary besides the fact that they were slow and that they were inept? The answer has more to do with scheme than it does anything else. If you take a look at the Cleveland Browns last year on tape, how many third downs did they give up? Because they couldn't go into a true dime defense. And if you can't field a roster to set up a dime scheme in the passing NFL, you're fucked. You're screwed. There's too many options now. The offenses are way too sophisticated. How many times did you see quarterbacks, just including the last game, quarterbacks scrambling on like third and fourth downs and having huge gaps to run through?
Oh, it was fucking miserable. They gave up so many rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks. It was sickening. It was literally sickening.
And when you have...
And we're not talking they're playing fucking Kyler Murray every goddamn week, people.
Yeah, well, what I can tell you from knowledge is that if you can't put a dime unit on the field, you're never going to blanket the field in pass coverage. And likewise, if you have slow athletes and lesser talent, you're not going to be able to cover them, even if you do. Joe Woods couldn't even run a dime out on the field because there weren't enough proper bodies to do so, and it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, he was constantly 9 cents short.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, and that is a good way of looking at it.
Motherfucker, you lucky I got a penny.
Yeah. So I don't, again, being able to field speed and aggression on the field at the same time, we talk about rookies who are going to make a splash. You look at a guy like Newsome, or you look at a guy like Karamoa. And these people all fit into the pieces that you can use in a true dime situation. And to tie in what I'm saying, if Jadeveon Clowney is 3/4 of the guy he was early on in his career, and he stays healthy, and we have Myles Garrett on the other side, and we have all these big boys that we can interchange in the interior line, some veterans, some young guys, somebody is going to stand out amongst this group of players because there's a lot of people in the mix. And even if there's not a singular great at the peak form of his career interior lineman, the running in and out of fresh bodies gets the job done. If you're forcing teams into 3rd and 7 situations and you go into a dime with the people that we now have in our defensive backfield, it could be lethal for teams trying to throw into that. It's like a maelstrom. You don't want to be throwing into a field that's blanketed that way. And to me, that's been another huge thing lacking for the Cleveland Browns. It's
and they also got substantially faster. And there's a reason why they signed John Johnson III as like one of the very first free agent signings.
Yeah, I mean, you realize John Johnson III, Ronnie Harrison Jr., and Delpit, they could all be out on the field for a fair number of snaps in an average game. Troy Hill is a new cornerback. Greg Newsome. Then you've got Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams. I mean, you've got 7 starting kind of defensive backs, which is, if you look at it historically, what Joe Woods was working with when he was in Denver. When Denver had the big pass defense, by the way, one of their cornerbacks was Akeem Talib, so, it wasn't like they were playing with garbage out there. Right. I mean, the Broncos from 2015 to 2018, he used a ton of nickel and dime sets, and they won the Super Bowl in 2015. What he sees that he wants to do, he physically could not do last year. And this year he will be able to implement his scheme. And the thing that's most important about this is that the Steelers just took another big fucking hit. Their offensive lineman, DeCastro, gone. He's done. They've released him. And the interesting thing about why they released him ought to tell you something about the Pittsburgh Steelers really coming apart at the seams. DeCastro basically told the organization, I got to have surgery on my ankle. And it would be a third time. They tried to fix it last year, DeCastro said, but bone spurs kept coming back. And it really hindered me pretty bad all last year. When asked if he still wants to play, the prospect of playing with the Pittsburgh Steelers in a world without Ben Roethlisberger in his prime, DeCastro said, got to see how the surgery goes, but I'd have no problem calling it a day and moving it on with my life. Is that what you want to hear from your players? But you know something? Nobody wants to be in a sinking ship, especially if you know nothing but winning.
Oh, we were talking to Tom Hawley and I we're in the CBD chat, and we were talking to a Steelers fan, and she asked us, what do you think of the oh no, this was on Twitter. She asked, what do you think of the future quarterback situation without Ben Roethlisberger? And we were like, I just came out flat and said, it's not going to be anybody on that roster right now. Taking over.
Yeah, I love the thought of Mason Rudolph becoming, the starting quarterback. We're going back to Bubby Brister, man. And and it takes a while. You know how long it takes to find a Ben Roethlisberger. Of course,
he had to be replaced by Neil O'Donnell for them to even make the fucking Super Bowl that they lost to the Cowboys here in Tempe.
You talk to the Steeler fans about Mark Malone and Bubby Brister, and they'll tell you what
remind them of those guys.
What the pain felt like. And it was real and palpable.
And they gave up on Cliff Stout, who was actually winning. That was like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
But thank God they did, because then Cliff Stout was able to come in and play a relief pitcher for no-hipped Neil Lomax.
Yeah, there you go. The Steelers only have one returning starter on their offensive line now, and that would be Okorafor. And
Best impact, are you fucking high? Nick Chubb is not a threat in the passing game.
Yeah, let's get off him, because obviously he's starting to want to draw attention. You start your own podcast if you want to say foolish things. That's not logical. The thing with Okorafor, he was the right side tackle, and they're going to move him, to the left. All right. So he's going to be learning a new position in essence, and he's the only one returning from last year. You really want to be in that situation. DeCastro is like, I want to take care of my ankle and live the rest of my life sipping Mai Tais on the beach. They do have a replacement, or they've gotten somebody to help out their circumstance. It isn't that the Pittsburgh, they're not going to go without offensive linemen. They have agreed to terms with former Pro Bowl guard Trey Turner on a 1-year deal. That's a prove-it deal, folks, if you're wondering. And Drew Rosenhaus. When a Jewish agent has to settle for a 1-year prove-it deal, that the commodity that he's selling, the value is not exactly high.
Well, and the other thing is they're so strapped because of some of the people that they're still paying.
Now, the Chargers released Trey Turner in March. They tried to trade him, Nobody was interested. He's only 28. He was limited to 9 games last year because of a groin injury, but said now he's 100%. He had no guaranteed money left on a 4-year, $45 million extension he signed with the Panthers in 2017, and he was traded to the Chargers in the 2020 offseason. The thing with Turner, he was selected to 5 Pro Bowls in his first 6 NFL seasons, all right? He was a third-round pick in the 2014 draft by the Panthers and has played 93 career games with 89 starts. So he's an experienced hand, but not somebody that anybody wanted to trade for last year.
Well, and speaking of groin injuries, wasn't that one of Beckham's complaints going into last year? And how did that turn out?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is how systemic something becomes and how chronic it becomes. So I don't know. I mean, I look at the Cleveland Browns as an entity by itself, and I look at what's surrounding them. And if you really want to take advantage of the circumstance that's presented for you to get better, you know, the Steelers are going down the rat hole, and the Ravens are better than the Browns until the Browns beat them. And the Bengals are
up and coming.
And they were up and coming last year, and the guy got hurt, and Burrow got hurt. We don't know. I honestly think the pattern of the Bengals, seeing as how they followed their pattern, they keep going for wide receivers in the first round of NFL drafts. I think that their coach is going to be fired at the end of the year. That would be Mike Brown. All right. And it was funny. They would fire coaches and keep bringing Andy Dalton back and wonder why every coach lost, why they couldn't get over the hump. Marvin Lewis was the last guy, and Marvin Lewis was just really doing whatever he could to hold on to a 500 record and try to eke in at 9-7. And 9-7 ain't getting it anymore. Yeah.
Well, and especially this year with 17 games.
If you want to compete with the Ravens, you got to have the best players out on the field. You can't, talking about finances doesn't get it done. So, that's what I can tell you about the Cleveland Browns. We're in the best position we can be in, and stop the foolishness about, Nick Chubb is not a threat in the passing game. The fact is, anytime he gets his hands on the ball, the fact is we don't throw to Nick Chubb that much. And as far as that goes, it's not like Kareem Hunt is being thrown to a ton. The Browns are a battering ram offense. They're running off tackle with both guys slamming, at least Kareem Hunt slamming into what's in front of him, and one cutting Nick Chubb, getting into the secondary and then raising hell once he gets through the line. The most interesting of the rookie things is Dearness Johnson versus Demetric Felton. And the thing that's interesting about that is that I don't even know what to call Demetric Felton, because they're working him out equally as a wide receiver and a running back, whereas Dearness Johnson is just a running back. I will say this, Dearness Johnson did not show any great ability to me as a receiver out of the backfield. He did strike me as being a backup running back in the NFL who could run the ball from scrimmage given the opportunity, and not a bad ball player. And he plays special teams. But I don't believe that, I have a feeling it's not going to come down to this as a running back strictly battle. I have a feeling that Demetric Felton,
he could also do returns for kicks or punts.
Because Anthony Schwartz, no matter what they're saying about Anthony Schwartz, forget about it. He's not going to return kicks. He doesn't have the hands to do that. And the reason I'm saying it's interesting is because Dearness Johnson was returning punts and kickoffs for a period of time, and Demetric Felton has been known to do that in college, along with catching passes and running ball from the line of scrimmage. So, and I saw Tony the Calf was trying to get in here, so maybe he's trying to find his way in. But yeah, it doesn't help to,
Well, he may be trying to find his way out of Minneapolis today.
Yeah, why? What's happening in Minneapolis?
We talked about it in the pregame show. The Chauvin verdict.
Oh, I'll be more than happy to answer your question. Let me add Tony to the screen. Hi, Tony. How you doing?
It's a great day.
Yeah.
I just accepted a job offer with Delta to be the co-manager of the Minneapolis Reservation Center.
Woohoo! You get is that the same job you had?
That's managing the people that I was.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. And
salary of $97,000 a year with escalations up to $105,000.
Good for you.
Hey, now you can move out to the burbs.
Fuck yeah. Good for
exactly.
you. Yeah.
I'll be here for a year, and then I'm transferring to the same position down in Tampa Bay. Oh,
Tampa. You're going to be down in this neck of the woods.
Yes, sir.
Oh, then you really want to be out in the burbs.
Yeah, one of the great joys of doing this program is like knowing somebody for Tony as long as I have and watching him grow up and seeing the ups and downs, the employment, the unemployment, the trying to land in the right place kind of thing. And he's found his way in with a big company. And, keep your nose clean. That's a great gig.
Yeah.
And good for you. Good for you.
Exactly.
Something had to make you feel good losing to Mejia and the Indians with your best pitcher on the mound. Something had to make you feel good today.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I got my little jollies in watching Eddie Rosario at second base. What the fuck? Did you see that move?
Yeah, well, I don't understand what Rosario was thinking. Well, he wasn't thinking.
No, he clearly wasn't.
But, what's interesting about that is I saw him do the very same thing in another game where he would round the base and slowly walk back to it. And that's just not, I don't think that, I'd say that it's right there with Javier Baez, not knowing how many outs there were.
Playing more like Joan Baez.
Yeah, that running with one out on a fly out and standing on third base while they just step on first, that was a different way of driving old Dixie down. I mean, bad mental process. So I'd be concerned, about that. Rosario was fortunate; he was able to come up and get the big hit that knocked his former team off. But wow. You had an opportunity early against Mejia, who is notorious for not having any command early in games, but you didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, well, that's why the Twins suck as much as they do, and you can get tickets tonight's game for about $1.50.
So going back to best impact, does Nick Chubb run routes? And the answer is no. And that's
Does
not
it
what
fucking matter?
Yeah, it's
Neither
not what
did Adrian Peterson, and look at what Peterson did.
It's not what he's paid to do. What I'm saying is that if you get the ball in his hands on a simple flare out, he can bust it and make a huge play. This is not the bread and butter of the Cleveland Browns offense. Demetric Felton, as a Swiss Army knife guy, he's more Swiss Army knife returning kicks and having the speed to maybe come in as an extra wide receiver and to run some of the gadgety plays or misdirection plays that JoJo Natson started out doing in the beginning of last year. No, Nick Chubb is not a receiver. He's a running back. But the fact is, he's a threat, and he doesn't have stone hands. Now he's
he dropped 2 passes against the goddamn Chiefs. Do you know how many 120 or 100 plus catch guys have dropped passes in the goddamn playoffs? You fucking a-hole. Do you? Yeah. Jerry Rice has dropped passes in a fucking playoff game. Get the fuck over it.
So I don't understand what the point of this onslaught is. Again, if you're...
we got some asshole on the CBD chat that's always... His opening comment is trade Chubb. Yeah, and I keep telling him why, so that the Browns could go back to being sub 500 for the next fucking 20 years because they gave up a generational talent.
Yeah. I mean, again,
nobody's going to be as dumb as Minnesota was to get fucking... oh, fuck. I can't think of his name.
Herschel Walker.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be that stupid anymore. You're not going to get 942 goddamn players for one anymore. There was only one guy that would do that deal. And I think, fortunately for Tony, he's long dead by now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, having 2 crucial drops against the Chiefs, you know what was crucial? And that's letting a stumble-bum quarterback come in who is no faster than Bill Masterson and allow him to scramble. And you get one opportunity to get a team off the field in a situation where Mahomes was hurt, and you can point to, during the course of the game, this guy did this, and he dropped 2 passes. And I'll point out to you that when you're playing a second-string quarterback who hadn't played any snaps the whole damn season, and you sit there and you let him, an old man, beat you with his 5.2 second 40-yard time, I would point my finger at that first before I'd be pointing it at one of the best running backs in the game. Goodness. We become overly critical of things. Well, I have Tony here. We talk about, the process in Philadelphia. Now, of course, we have the Cavaliers having moved up to the number 3 position. Cade Cunningham is claimed, by the way. So you have your choice of a slew of players. Now, what do you do, Tony, if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers? What do you do?
I would say if you're the Cavs, you pray Mobley drops to 2, or you trade out of the pick. Because you don't need Jalen Suggs. I mean, you've got Darius Garland. And Suggs and Garland aren't going to play together. Outside of the
especially you don't need Suggs if you got Isaac Okoro.
Yeah. And
makes no sense.
You got Colin Sexton. He's not fucking a free agent. You hope Mobley drops to 3. And if not, I would say you trade out of the pick, maybe trade down a couple of picks and get another pick or something. Or if I'd see, everybody wants this fucking cagey veteran, and it's just not going to get that in the NBA these days. Like, you're going to end up with like a D'Angelo Russell who's okay, but he's not fucking a franchise cornerstone that's going to lead you to winning.
No. No, I mean, and I'll say this: when Jared Allen came to the Cavaliers, right after he got out from underneath the weight of the Nets, he looked like a killer.
Yeah.
And after playing in Cleveland for a while, it was just really a matter of time until he lost interest. And this is what we call DeCastro-ing. It is, I don't really care whether I come back and play or not, because what the hell, Pittsburgh, what am I going to come back and wreck my ankle again to play behind, in front of Mason Rudolph? It's like, fuck that shit, And this is the problem when you have a lousy organization that has no leadership. Why would you want to take Evan Mobley if you already have Jared Allen? And the reason is Jared Allen is due a payday, and it's going to take 5 years, $100 million to get him, and the Cavaliers don't want to spend that money. So what they're going to do is they're going to replace him with a bigger string bean who does not have enough weight and strength to play in the NBA. He's going to get pushed around. He's 7 foot and only 215 pounds. That makes him actually 20 pounds lighter than Jared Allen. Now, I'll be honest with you. Jared Allen was getting pushed around, and he was becoming more and more disenfranchised and disinterested by the minute. And it wasn't because of Darius Garland. I don't think Kevin Love help matters with his I don't give a fuck attitude.
Yeah.
But in this draft, you're sitting at number 3. And if you want to try to do something with this team, Colin Sexton, bye-bye. The reason I say this is because he cannot help me defensively. He is an off-the-bench elite scorer in bunches, but he does not pass the ball. He does not make players around him better. He is not a team leader, but he does know how to hit a big shot. He's a sixth man who you can keep in the game at the end when the game's on the line because he's got big balls. That's who Colin Sexton is. 24.1 points a game. Not demeaning what he's capable of doing. But at 6'1" at best, playing alongside of Darius Garland, there's never going to be anything resembling a problem shooting over these guys. We're going to be giving up threes like there's no tomorrow with these two players on the floor. And Garland is a true point guard, and obviously Colin Sexton is not. So I'm saying if you want to get rid of Jared Allen because you don't want to pay him, you're definitely not taking a step forward with Evan Mobley. There is no reason to believe that a guy from USC, all right, who is a former 5-star prospect, who averaged 16.5 points a game and 8.7 rebounds in 33 games last year at USC. There's no reason to believe that he's going to come into the league better than Jared Allen. And he's about the same age, a little younger. All right?
Hi, Key.
So, you know, and Mobley may not even be on the board at 3. He may get taken 2 below Cade Cunningham.
Yeah. That's when you're Scotty Barnes, yuck. Jonathan Kuminga, goodbye, fuck no. That's when you trade. I mean, unless you want to give up on Darius Garland for Jalen Suggs, which...
Nobody in their right mind would do such a thing.
No.
I think Darius Garland's a player. But I don't think that he's Luka Doncic. He's not that.
No.
None of these players are elite. And at the number 3 pick, you're not going to get an elite player.
No.
And
you're
gonna,
in the...
Go ahead.
Cleveland is now in what Minnesota calls the perennial overturn of the NBA.
Yes.
We're in that for, this is the latest, greatest prospect. Oh, he wants a new contract? Well, we'll get rid of him, and then we'll redraft another one for another 5 years and rinse repeat for 20 fucking years.
Yeah, but don't the Cavs really need a power forward?
I think they need more than just a power forward.
Well, I mean, but to start to patch up the vacuum that is, left behind by Kevin Love.
Yeah, he's still on the roster though, and I mean, good luck getting somebody to take his contract.
Well, no, I mean he's not.
They're eventually just going to have to eat shit and fucking release him.
Yep.
Because he can't play.
He'll be Blake Griffin next. He'll be next year's Blake Griffin. He'll get cut by the Cavs at the the deadline, and he'll go sign with like Milwaukee or fucking Brooklyn or something.
Somebody that he can get a wide open look from behind the arc and bury it. He's going to be a career extender because I'll tell you, he has no verticality anymore. Not that he had a ton to begin with, but he doesn't have the strength or the mobility. His back is bad, and he can only play a certain number of minutes.
Yep.
He's that's it. I mean, that's what happens. And again, for the Cavaliers, we need a wing. We have no wings, and I don't know how on the hell you're supposed to win without a wing in the NBA. It makes no sense.
You can't play Okoro, who's 6'3".
He's undersized. He's 6'4" tops. And they tried putting him on threes at the beginning of the season, and he just physically, mauled. And I totally agree with what you're saying, Tony, and I'll go one step further. Yeah. The Cleveland franchise makes players worse. LeBron James made players better, and he made better players accessible to the organization. Yeah. But whenever he's not been here, the organization has got steadily worse. And the reason is because these NBA coaches they bring in, the stopgap JB Bickerstaffs and these folks, or God only knows John Beilein in his half-a-minute career in the NBA, players don't take to instruction well when they're just know they're going to make a ton of money. And it's very hard to keep the players' interest going. And in Cleveland, you can see it started out looking, hey, they're really playing for Bickerstaff. And it was fun the first 10 games of the year. But then reality hit, and then you could see the disinterest. And then you saw Kevin Love literally have one of his mental health issues. And that he celebrates so goddamn much about. I get really tired of seeing a lack of effort. And then you had Ben Wallace, listen to me.
They did have Ben Wallace at one point.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it reminded me of.
Are you talking about Ben Simmons?
No. I mean, what comes to my mind, the guy who played it, I've forgotten about him. The Lakers got him just from the Cavs, and he's just Andre Drummond. Yeah. Andre Drummond was a piece of shit. He was a piece of shit from the moment he came in the league. He's a walking, talking bad attitude, and he's a magnet for badness. And once he came to the Cavaliers and he started playing hard in the beginning, things started looking good in the beginning. But as soon as he found out that Jared Allen was brought in, because he's a fucking ball hog and he turned the ball over like a monster, then he just didn't give a fuck anymore. And that's exactly what happened with the Lakers. Wherever Drummond goes, his team tanks. Underperforming, me first, I'll put up some points, but I'm a black hole in the center pivot position in an era where big men have to be more athletic. He ain't going to help anybody. But these players get worse when they're with the Cavaliers. It reminds me of the Ted Stepien Cavaliers, when it was just a done deal that you'd be lucky if you won 25 games in a fucking season or 28 games. It would be lucky. And you're not making any progress whatsoever. And that's the problem. So you bring in another young guy, and what's going to happen to Mobley? What's going to happen when he's surrounded by nothing? He's like, I made the top 8 in college in a non-traditional basketball program at USC. What's going to happen to him when he comes to Cleveland and they lose every fucking game they play?
Yeah, then he gets disenfranchised and it's a restart. Yeah. It's just like Karl Anthony Towns. Look at him. Number 1 pick.
It's sad. It's sad to watch what losing does to these players. So,
That's how the NBA operates, though. That's the modus operandi. I mean, if you're not in a big fucking city, yeah, you're good for a bit, and then these teams get desperate to bring you in, and that's why the Timberwolves had to fucking give up Andrew Wiggins and a first round pick for D'Angelo Russell.
And
And
I
that's why
can't get any interest, really. It's hard to get interested in a Cavaliers team where the players clearly, are moping.
fucking
And
Jetty Osman. I would rather watch fucking Donnie Osman fucking play basketball than Jetty Osman. God.
yeah, it's nauseating to me watching the ball being turned over. Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's really hard for me to sit there and watch. The Hawks won. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But watching these teams shoot 8 for 35 from behind the arc,
Yeah, it's not
what the
fun.
fuck is? I mean, they're not even running a coaching offense. What kind of shit is that?
It's like Trey Young will just fucking fire from the logo, and it's like, what are you doing? Fucking run,
Well,
play.
and both teams, it's like, oh, it's an exciting game. It came right down to the end. Well, it's because no team was good enough to pull away from the other one. They're both and really with the game on the line, they're coming down the court just hoisting these horrible shots. And it's like, somebody's got to call a timeout and put an end to this shit.
Yeah.
But that's the NBA today. And it's really, hard to get players, and they're cracking down from a defensive perspective. And they don't have the energy to be nonstop motion on offense. And you end up with the Trey Young dribbling around. And one of two things is going to happen. He's going to hoist it from the logo, or he's going to get the ball off to Herder, who's going to try a three or a fadeaway. And, and no one is getting offensive rebounds. If you notice, they're immediately turning and running down the floor to play defense again. It's peculiar. Really peculiar.
You ever try watching a WNBA game?
Why would I do such a thing?
I don't know. I tried watching like last night for 5 minutes, and it was just like, God, fucking like completely missing the basket on the easiest of layups with nobody around him. I'm like, this is fucking professional basketball in the year 2021.
I mean, you know what I watched? I watched the Nets go down because, Kyrie, it was so horribly hurt he couldn't play. And Harden, being unable to do what he needed to do. And I watched Durant carry the team by himself. And, what is wrong with having an unstoppable 2-point fadeaway? What is wrong with that? I mean, before Kevin Love was a 3-point hoister, you saw him play in his prime years, and he was a bank shooter from the mid-range.
Mm-hmm.
He'd back you down, and he'd take that damn thing off the backboard, man, and he'd bank it in, and you couldn't guard it. And it was like watching Paul Pierce and his fadeaway. All these guys who became so proficient at consistently hitting 2-point shots. Now we have guys taking off-balance threes. And I'm watching Durant put up 45 points in games and doing it, he can do it face up from three, but he can do it with his back to the basket, and nobody's going to guard him with his arm length. You would think that more players in the NBA would develop that separation shot. But instead, the separation is, well, he's laying off me, I'll just chuck it from the logo. I don't know.
Oh.
Well, I'm done. It's 4 after 7, and I want to thank everybody for coming here. And, fear not, Browns fans. We're heading in the right direction. We're going to sign our people. Don't worry about that.
Relax, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony, send me information. Want to send me like a private message or something and let me know what's going on exactly, and how long you're going to be up in Minneapolis and when you're heading back down this way. That's fun. I'm really proud of you. Good job.
For sure.
Now you can golf year round.
Yeah. Tony the golfer. Yeah, he's Yeah, the problem is Tony got hurt. The last time he golfed here, he fell off the ball washer. No. All right, thanks
Or
everybody.
fell asleep during the ball washing.
Yeah.
No, we're not good now.
No.
Now he's no. If he's $100,000 six-figure Tony, he's Big Dick Tony.
Yeah.
That's going to be his name. Big Dick Tony.
BDT.
He's going to be a chick magnet. You say six figures, and you're going to have yourself a girlfriend. Even if she can't find your dick, it doesn't take it from somebody who knows. Okay? Never had a problem that way. Oh, God. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hope everybody has a really pleasant weekend until Monday. Hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.
Thanks for stopping by, Key.